is an opportunity that we can still be able to redeem. At regional level, I think as you can be able to observe, I think the Western region still fares poorly when it comes to issues of stunting. Now, child anemia, there is this is where they have low hemoglobin levels or low blood, and it shows that 4 out of every 10 children aged 6 to 59 months, it should be 59, that were anemic. And so we have still that challenge, but also you see even amongst the adults, the statistics show that we still have about 44% of the adults also, heads of households who are anemic. Again, the representative of the development partners talked about a child who is obese. Now, obese, in this case, ideally there is a body mass index. Body mass index is used to measure whether somebody is in the normal range or you are overweight or obese. Now, if you are less than 18 kilograms per meter squared, then there is a problem. Now, between 18 and 25, that's the normal body mass index. Now, between 25 and 29.9, we are referring them as overweight. Now, anyone with a BMI of above 30 and above are the ones we are categorizing as obese. And so that's the statistics that we have based on the PAN survey. In terms of overweight, 2 out of 10, for those especially 18 years and above, were also overweight. Now that's, as I said, the body mass index is between 25.1 to 29.9. That's where the range for someone who has been categorized as overweight. Now, anemia among women aged 15 to 49, because that's the reproductive age. For women with the reproductive age, it's important that they have, they don't suffer from anemia, especially during that period, because as you have been informed, whatever happens from conception up to 2 years impacts on the child. And so we find that about 3 out of 10 women aged between 15 to 49, were anemic. And the regional distribution is as shown on the slides. And all this this is just highlights. The rest is in the book. Now, this panel survey also, we did try to look at, some of the non-communicable disease element that would be able to capture within the limits of the survey. And so the teams were able also to be able to measure the blood pressure levels of the respondents. We're working with the Ministry of Health, and we provide the team with the equipment to be able to assess. And so far, that's the statistic. In terms of gender, it seems the men had a slightly registered, the prevalence was higher than that of females. And I think this region, Central region, seems to have had more of those who reported that, whose results indicated that the pressure levels were above the limits. Now, as I said, this is a panel survey. It had a number of modules. One of the modules was on nutrition, where we look at, we specifically focused on women 15 to 49, but also the children under 5 years. But in addition, also we had an agriculture module which looked at the agricultural activities and production within a household, in addition to the other socioeconomic characteristics that household engage in. And so, as I said, nutrition is not just about food, but there are also nutrition-specific interventions that impact on children. And here, there are just a few highlights on the nutrition-specific. And later on, I'll be talking about nutrition-sensitive interventions. Now, in terms of early initiation to breastfeeding, 8 out of 10 children were breastfed within the first 1 hour. The recommendation is, I think, for the protection of the baby, I think it's important that the child is initiated breastfeeding within first 1 hour. The experts in this room know better. I'm getting to learn these things by associating with the experts. Then also we have the minimum diet diversity for the children. It is also indicated that a child should be exclusively breastfed the first 6 months. And after 6 months, this child should be provided with either semi-solid foods and a few other foods. But there also the diversity of the foods is key. And there are aspects of having more than 4 groups, food groups, that you should be having. And what it shows here is 1 in 10. Under 1 in 10 infants meets the minimum diet diversity requirements. So, and I think it has also alluded to the fact that they could be having so much food, but probably it's not that we don't consume it in the amounts that we would expect when it comes to how diverse are these food items that we have or we consume. Now, there is also the minimum meal frequency. How many meals do you take, especially for these children? There are those who are breastfed. Now, the number of meals they take, I think the recommended number of times is 2 to 3. But for those who are not breastfeeding, it's about 4. And so it varies depending on the feeding practice. That's what the experts did indicate. And so it shows that about half of the children meet the required number of meals, meal frequency. The question would be, what is happening to the other half? And so when you start building up all of these elements, I think we need to start reflecting on the impact, especially at that young age, and the cumulative effect over time. And so then there's also the minimum acceptable diet, which is a combination of the diet diversity and the minimum meals. And so we just find that 1 in 10 of these children either meets the required diet, acceptable diet. In other words, the 9 out of 10 fail the test. And in terms of residences, there isn't so much difference. There are 2 years here because we have a panel survey every year, but it shows there is really not so much difference. At household level, we also try to look at probably what influences what children take could also be a result of what adults take. And so we have the household meal frequencies, and where we have 4 out of 10 households can afford 2 meals a day. That is if you include breakfast. Don't ask me what is on the breakfast, but as long as it is breakfast, we'll probably discuss that later. In terms of vitamin A supplementation, as I indicated, in this study, we did 2 aspects. There is vitamin A supplementation to boost the immune system of these children, and the experts tell us that prolonged deficiency in vitamin A could lead to blindness or other things. And so we find that at least 8 out of 10 are taken vitamin A supplements. But as I indicated, the biomarker tests, the results are going to come very soon, and we'll be sharing what's happening, because biomarkers is the analysis based on the blood, what the vitamin, the iron, the minerals in the blood, and so that analysis is still going on. But this is the vitamin A supplementation that the children, reported, or the mothers reported as having been given to these children. Then we also looked at deworming. Ideally, there is a recommended period where they should, not only adults, but even other children, even adults, I think we should be supposed to deworm ourselves. I'm not sure whether we do, but probably that will be another discussion. But for even children, we only find that about half of the children actually, received the deworming tablets, or at least they were, reported having been dewormed. And the distribution across residence, rural, urban, and regional level is as shown. Now, that is, as far as the nutrition-specific aspects are concerned. Now we look at the nutrition-sensitive elements of nutrition. Apologies for the colors, they are not very friendly, but what trying to bring out here is that when, irrespective of where you come from or which region you look at, whether it's central, eastern, northern, we consume so much of the staples. Okay, so staples take the lion's share of everything. Now, the moderator urged us to eat whatever is in front of you or of us. And when you look at the share there, it's only about 10% of the household that reported having, or consuming what is in front of you. So maybe as a demonstration this week that we have eaten them, maybe we need to clear them before we leave, and maybe they'll tell us. But what we're trying to bring out is that so much of it is staples, and yet in nutrition, the diversity, as far as the benefits of nutrition is concerned, I think we seem not to be having that diversity in the proportions probably that's recommended. And so maybe we need to do a little more there. In terms of food security, a number of households reported that they couldn't afford, they had difficulties, and of course food security is not just having food, but also the access aspect. And so even at regional level, now, please don't ask me why it's this way when Karamoja, we have been having the story. This is 2019-20. So the situation now is different, and some of these indicators change very fast. But there is also a survey which we are about to conclude that will also be helping us. But also the demographic and health survey is we are about to complete data collection so that early next year we shall have more updated information on a number of these areas. Now, if you recall, there was a slide where I talked about, we looked at the shares, Now, here it shows how much you spend. Most of our expenditures goes to staples, so it's consistent with the other one, irrespective of which region. And so, if we are to have a balanced, or if we are to diversify the diets that we consume to be able to improve our nutrition levels, then also we need to think about spending more. Probably the question will be, do we have the money to spend? That's a different discussion. But the issue is, if we are to improve the nutrition status, I think we need to look to also start focusing on maybe how best do we also ensure that our parents, our mothers, our sisters, you know, start considering the other groups, you know, of foods, fruits and vegetables, sugars, condiments, spices, and so on, as also part of the wider, you know, diversification program. And so the other aspect is school feeding. Now here the focus was for those 6 to 12 years, and we asked whether they had a meal at school, and for 40% did indicate that yes, they took a meal at school, and most of it was mainly in Central. That's where it was reported at highest. But you know, of course, the other 60% didn't take anything. So that is also something we could perhaps think about. Now, as I said, this is just a summary and a bit of highlights. It shows that stunting is still a challenge. Improvements have been made, but there is still, you know, a number of children, our children who are stunted. Anemia is still high, especially among pregnant women and also among children. The low diet diversity, you know, as I indicated, is a challenge, and the frequency of meals and that children take combined with the minimum acceptable diet is still low. The staple foods is really, you know, our thing. It takes the lion's share of our budget. I don't know whether maybe because we grow it and from the garden we consume, but also maybe because of inability to acquire through purchase, and therefore, you know, the low household meal frequencies, you can't afford. Some of them couldn't afford the 2 meals a day, and so a few were reporting those 2 or 3 meals. As the Executive Director mentioned, this has been a collaborative effort between the World Bank, the government of Uganda, the European Union, and USAID and UNICEF. And so there are elements, especially in the areas of nutrition, where we've been working with the European Union, the Center for Disease Control, especially to get the inputs through Ministry of Health, and also making sure that the health team actually does its work. Because much as we coordinate as a bureau, the protocols have to be followed, and the Ministry of Health and CDC have been at the forefront of ensuring that we don't violate any of those processes. So we would like to appreciate all the services, and I thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just request and invite us to clap more for Mr. Mwonge, who is the Director Methodology and Statistical Coordination at UBOS. Thanks for a good job. And you know, I paid very keen attention to you, not just because I'm moderating, but because some of the statistics made me think of a lot of things. One of them that we need to, as we think about the percentage of Ugandans who are still stunted, children, you said over 10%? About 10% of Ugandan children born below the average weight below 2 kilograms. Some of us were 4.6. So we need to thank our mothers, really. I was 4.6 when I was born. My follower, a lady, was 4.9, and she gave birth to 9 of us. And now I think that I need to thank her more. No wonder when she was crossing 50, she started having problems, back aches and then knee problems. Now I can understand some of the problems we give to our mothers. Isn't it important that you clap for them? And now you can see why some of us are these sizes, perhaps because of those first 1,000 days. But for me, with statistics, I think we need to ask the Muwonges more questions. They present the figures, the statistics as they are, and then they don't want to be asked the causes. I saw one of them that 2 out of 10 women of reproductive age were anemic in the year under review. But he doesn't say why. And yet, there is no solution minus knowing why. So I think statisticians, you need to, again, go back to the field, since this is a panel survey, and prepare us for the reasons that lead to some of these things, so that, you know, the implementers, the ministers, the MPs, I've seen the director of manifesto implementation in the room, Mr. Willis. These are the guys who should be knowing, why are these women anemic? Why is in the summary you said the Western suffers most from stunting. Why? And yet we know that most of the foods we get in Kampala is from Western Uganda. So why are they not eating their own food before selling? Are they selling most of the food? I think for me, as an ordinary Ugandan, not an expert in these things, I would want to know that, so that then we task the MPs, the policymakers, the implementers to now go on a sensitization campaign to help change the situation. As you presented, we were joined by the Honorable Joyce Sevugwao, Minister of State in the Ministry of ICT. Mama, you're most welcome. Thank you so much for joining us in this high-level dialogue. We are now going to hear from a personal story that should, you know, if nothing else, should give us more true mirror of some of the things that we are talking about. They sound abstract when they are presented in statistics, but there is someone who has lived that story. And one of the things that that story should bring out is the fact that, you know, the disabusing of that thinking that, you know, many rich people, people who can afford, think that for them they are fine as far as nutrition is concerned. But we are going to hear from Miss Angela Nanziri. She has lived that story. She has been a working person who could afford everything that we have been talking about. She can afford to have fruits on the table. She can afford to have 3 meals a day, which is hard from the presentation. And yet, she had a child who got into some of the challenges that we are talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me now invite Angela Nanziri, where is she, to come and speak to her story, the story of her child, a Ugandan, so that we can then, you know, understand better what we are talking about. You're most welcome. Let's put our hands together and welcome her.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to be here this morning. It's a privilege that I cannot take for granted because I get to share my story with many millions around the globe, because I know many are watching or will watch afterwards. As I've been introduced, my name is Angela Rachel Naziri, and yes, I've experienced this because many do not know that this is real. It is real. Well, for my part, I think I would title my story as the plight of a corporate mother. And you will take a second if you can. You will go to my LinkedIn page and see my full story there. This morning I decided to retell the same story I told 5 months ago. Well, my predicament didn't happen 5 months ago. It actually happened 6 years ago. And for your information, I had to take a drastic decision to leave employment, and I was unemployed for 6 years just to take care of my son. So you will allow me to retell my story the way I told it on my LinkedIn page. Maybe I'll be able to save a mother out there who is going through the same. Well, my story then was titled, Anxiety is Killing You. That's what I called my story. I just, woke up in the middle of the night and decided to pour my heart out because I didn't know any other way to share this. Well, I have 2 children, if you must know, a boy and a girl, Tanzania and Amsterdam. But today I'm going to share with you about Amsterdam. That is my son that we are sharing about this morning. Well, the year was 2017, and my boy was only 9 months old. And back then I was serving in the bank. My employer was in the banking industry. And well, this is emotional. You'll pardon me when you see me go quiet because it brings back very hurtful memories. Well, it was one Saturday afternoon. I was going home, and one of the lady vendors by the roadside, she humbly asked, Nyabo, yagwe mama omwana oli, loosely translated, are you the mother of the other boy? Of course, she gave me a brief description. My childminder would, occasionally go out with my boy to take walks and all that. And then she said, omwana wo weetaaga okumutwala mu ddwaliro kuba tali bulungi. Loosely translated, she said, you need to take your child to the hospital because he is not well. I stood and then, I absent-mindedly just walked away because I was wondering, where does she get the guts to say that to me? I've not seen anything wrong with my child. But she was an elderly woman and she only knew better. She knew what she was talking about. At least I didn't know, So, why was it weird that she would say my boy was sick? Because, my boy was chubby, that pseudo-chubbiness. He was growing fat and I thought he was being fed well. But then, you know what? I decided to say, okay, let me go and check on this boy. So when I reached home, my childminder quickly said, Mami, omwana ono azimba ebigere, simanyi kizibu ki, loosely translated, that the child keeps, getting big feet, and she didn't know what the cause was. So I decided to go to a hospital, I went to Keserena Children's Hospital in Bukoto, it was an evening. So I sat there as the doctors tried to examine my child, and I could tell from the pacing up and down, something wasn't right. And then the lady, she was so sweet, and then she told me, you know what, we cannot manage your situation here, and I'm going to send you to Mwana Mujimu. So she booked me in, you know, she made an advance call, and you know, I almost got dizzy. Things were moving so fast. I'm like, now what's the problem? If they are referring me to a national hospital, it must be serious. So I went home, I packed my boys' bags, and then I went to Mulago Hospital. The first time I had been to Mulago is when I was having my first child. That's the only experience I had until I had to walk through the doors of Mwana Mujimu Nutrition Clinic. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. You know, the biggest shame, you know, I was well groomed, you know, I was a respectable young corporate, but then you're carrying a child that is malnourished. You know, all the doctors could not believe it. You know, some ridiculed me. You know, all that got to me because they could not believe that I could look the way I looked, but my child was wasting away. So I went to the acute unit, and when the doctors examined my boy, I was told he had edema. And I think they told me the reason was he had a deficiency of protein in his diet. So he was retaining water in his body. That's why he was growing fat. And I thought my child was healthy. And you know, with my work routine, I would leave home at 5 a.m., come back close to midnight, you know, and I would not have an opportunity to see my baby. And I thought all was well, but little did I know, because from the onset, my boy could not breastfeed. He refused to breastfeed, so he had an intolerance for milk. So he would not take milk, and the childminder was not alerting me about this. So he kept taking carbohydrate, you know, that brown porridge or buseda. He kept taking that without milk, and you know, I had no idea. You know, I cannot stop blaming myself. So he had fluid retention in his body because he lacked protein in his diet, and that's why he was all swelling up. But then I started noticing his skin color was changing. It was turning into yellow. He had scanty hair. So all that was revealed to me when I was at Mwana Mujimu. So I had to be admitted. I was admitted for 3 weeks at the facility. But the doctors, you know, gave me some pep talk. You know, they said, if you want to leave this establishment real quick, you've got to humble yourself and accept to learn. That was the hardest thing, my people. It was the hardest thing, you know. You're looking at the mothers that are there, and then you're looking at yourself. There's a disconnect. These are people that cannot afford all the 3 meals we are talking about. You know, it kind of belittled me. It humbled me. Those 3 weeks in Mwana Mujimu humbled me. And I cannot emphasize it enough. I don't know, I cannot really tell you for you to understand what I was going through. Because one, I could not breastfeed my boy. He could not be fed on a bottle. You know, they had to give him 75 meals of that special milk they give. Imagine a child is crying, you can't breastfeed because I wasn't breastfeeding. You can't feed him on milk. You know, they're injecting him all the time, you know, trying to feed him. It was very absurd. So, and then after the 3 weeks, the doctors sat me down and they told me, you can go back and work, and then you'll lose your child, because the risk was he was going to be stunted. Then his motor skills would be affected. So the lady told me, you have a choice. You can go back to your banking job and see your child waste, or you can sacrifice and take care of your child. Ladies and gentlemen, that felt like a 1,000,000-mile journey to the moon and back. Imagine you're used to that corporate life.
I remember the lockdown, when the streets were empty and our lives disrupted, when businesses closed and our livelihoods hung in the balance. Hospitals were full. We lost loved ones, jobs, and hope. Our children couldn't study anymore. We cannot let this happen again. We should not go back. Get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and join the millions of Ugandans who are already vaccinated.
At 9, but we know that in your busy schedule you have found time to come, and being a Tuesday you even have Parliament, so we really thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as protocol demands, I'm going to request us to sing the national anthem. It will be played by the technical people, and then the East African anthem, and then we will resume our seat to allow the Minister in charge of Agriculture to wind up on his responses. Anthems, please. Thank you very much. May I invite us all to have our seats for a moment. Once again, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Robin Anabanja, we want to welcome you. Amidst you in this room, we have ministers from agriculture, public service. We have ministers from within the office of the Prime Minister. We have Minister of State from ICT. We have a diversity of experts and partners that you know about, that you work with within the Prime Minister's office. This is a high-level dialogue, national dialogue on nutrition situation report 2019-2020, and we are having a discussion, Honorable Prime Minister, on a panel survey that was led by UBOS and working closely in conjunction with the Prime Minister's office, with the help of a number of development partners. We have the World Bank, the EU, USAID, UNICEF, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, and different partners that have been involved in gathering data for the last 3 or 4 years that has brought us to this stage. Right Honorable Prime Minister, when we started the discussion, we had a presentation from Mr. Edward Walugembe, the Commissioner in your office of the Prime Minister, but who represented the Permanent Secretary. We also had a presentation from the Executive Director of UBOS, represented by his Deputy Executive Director. We then had presentations on behalf of development partners, and then we had a panel discussion. You came, fortunately, when the panel members are still here in front of you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, and they had just ended. At the time that you found us discussing, we were having a plenary involving all the experts from across the country, and we are taking a look at the different experiences. But Right Honorable Prime Minister, one of the very interesting sharing of a live mother's experience we had from a lady who is still amidst us here, Miss Angela Nanziri Rachel, who was forced to leave her job and forced to leave her master's education that she had started pursuing in order to intervene to save the life of her son, who had fallen a victim of a situation arising out of malnutrition or poor feeding, if you like. We have had a very good discussion, a multiplicity of presentations from the different parts of the country, and you found when the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Frank Tumwebaze, was responding to some of the issues that had been raised, and he had just started as you came in. So we want to welcome you and to hope that you will give us some time for the Honorable Frank and some of the ministers, your colleagues who are responsible for the different dockets. Questions have been raised about the malnourished information dissemination, sensitization as far as nutrition and food security is concerned in the country, and we expect the Minister of ICT to address some of those issues. We also expect ministers within your department for Karamoja or any other region to weigh in and throw in some words on questions that have been raised from the plenary. Allow me now, Right Honorable Prime Minister, to invite back the Honorable Frank Kajiji Tumwebaze to wind up on his presentations and responses. Thank you very much.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, I had just started, so I can't win what happens, but I'll be brief, no worries.
It's okay.
I had two broad points, because we are responding to the panel, which is helping us to deeply interrogate the report. Nutrition is an outcome. If I had time, I would draw for you a conceptual framework there. Nutrition is an outcome. If it's an outcome, it's a dependent variable. Dependent variable influenced by independent variables. What are those independent variables? Honorable Cole and someone talked about it. Food security is one major dependent variable that influences nutrition. The other independent variable is animal feed security. What you feed the animals determines what kind of nutrition byproduct you get. A poorly fed cow may give you even much more milk, but watery. The teachers may know. What you feed the pigs will determine what you get from them. So, if you have to draw a conceptual framework there, you will have food security, you will have animal feed security, you will have other factors in the middle that you may call confounding factors, environment, education that the commissioner from water talked about. You can even have many others. So when we are addressing nutrition, we must ask ourselves, how are we addressing food security? When you hear us clamoring for more money to buy tractors, it's because we want to horizontally expand production. Horizontal expansion means open more land. I want more land in the land of Honorable Court to be expanded. Because as we stand now, according to UBOS, only 34.4% of arable land is under agricultural production. 34.4, roughly 35. It doesn't qualify because you cannot, but let's say 35. It means 65% is underutilized. We are fighting for land, we are titling land, we are buying land, but it's underutilized. So when we say give us more money to mechanize, I am contributing to nutrition, because there is no nutrition without food production. The second point is, how are we feeding the animals? You want eggs, they are from poultry. If the chicken farmers are running away, poultry farmers are running away because of high cost of feeds, the end result will be poor nutrition report like you have here. Secondly, environment. What does the ecology of this area talk about a particular nutrition report? So in other words, the strategy to achieve high levels of nutrition must embrace food security interventions, must embrace animal feed security interventions. And that's why I'm happy to see OPM connecting this effort, where all of us have a role. And that's my last point. Because Ministry of Health should lead on articulating what's a balanced diet. An extension worker may not know that. Am I right, Honorable Dietary? An extension worker will concentrate on good husbandry practices. A vet will be for diagnostics. But the Ministry of Health, they have experts to tell us if I have beans and cassava, am I safe nutrition-wise? So they should describe that menu, the combo for nutrition. And then we provide the food. Ministry of Water tells us what kind of ecosystem we should work in. Then Ministry of Works will give us the roads. Then Ministry of Finance will provide the money for all these interventions. So I am happy it is none other than the Right Honorable Prime Minister coordinating this effort. Honorable Akor, even if you have the food committees, even if you have the food commission, if we don't put money in a coordinated effort to address these issues, we may not achieve the targets. to the development partners and NGOs, let's coordinate our work. Let's coordinate our work such that we don't fund multiple interventions. You find you are putting more money in one activity while leaving the other. Why am I saying this? There is less appetite for funding agencies to fund agricultural machinery. There is less appetite to fund value addition. You get it? For example, if you got potatoes and you got chips out of potatoes. So the question is, cassava chips and potato chips, which ones are more nutritious? I guess potato chips and the real potato, our real original potato, could be more nutritious than cassava chips. But if you have a program on nutrition funded by some funder, they will not prioritize machinery. It is workshop, it is mindset change. What's wrong with this mind that never changes? There's so much funding to education. You don't want to fund the extension worker. You don't want to fund the lady from that health center who is there. We hire consultants. I am happy the Right Honorable Prime Minister is charged and in high spirit to abolish consultants. I thank you, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is the question of the lady from Kumi that I had requested that you specifically respond to. Honorable Frank, do you want to respond to that one? Okay. Will he also handle, because someone talked about the question of going back to, I think it is the Honorable Minister in charge of public service, that there is need to go back, because he was asking the question of how, that every available resources are there, but the how. And the question of, can we do something like to ensure food security, because it was noted that without food security you cannot talk of nutrition. Is Honorable Bino going to respond to that as well as agriculture? Thank you very much. So Honorable Frank, we can release you once you have gotten permission from your Prime Minister. Are there other ministers who want to say yes? Honorable Nandutu and Honorable Jennifer, starting with Honorable Nandutu. Can we get the microphone to Honorable Nandutu? Okay, first them and then agriculture will be last before the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Moderator. Our Prime Minister, Right Honorable Nana Banja, Cabinet Ministers, all protocols observed. Greetings to you. I just want to talk about, somebody talked about the interventions we have in Karamoja on food security. And I would like to inform this meeting that in the past governments, the people of Karamoja were living on the shores of life while the water was flowing. Nobody cared about them. But when this NRM government came into power, Karamoja was one of the 10-point program. And since then, government has focused a lot of attention on Karamoja. And we are all saying the Karamoja has now joined the economic parade of progress of Uganda. And we are not leaving them behind. We are developing with them. Unlike in the previous where they said, we shall not wait for Karamoja to develop. So there is a lot of intervention in Karamoja. Under our good leadership of the Right Honorable Prime Minister, we have a master plan to ensure food production in Karamoja region by providing fast-growing seeds, and already that has started. Ministry of Agriculture has already supplied seeds to Karamoja region. All the 9 districts, the seeds that will grow in just 2 weeks. And there is a plan in the Ministry of Karamoja and the Ministry of Agriculture. We are working together. Our Right Honorable Minister has put up in the Ministerial Committee that is, every ministry is taking a role. Agriculture is going to provide tractors to Karamoja region in all the 9 districts. So under this good leadership of our Right Honorable, there is going to be massive food production in Karamoja. We don't want to supply food relief. We want the Karamajongs to grow our own food. So that one is once for all. We shall not supply food to Karamoja again, but we shall grow our own food. But as the people have already talked about it, mindset is very important. We, the people of Karamoja, are focused on livelihood. And therefore, we need to put a lot of resources in mindset change that we can do livestock, but also agriculture to cater for the nutrition of the people of Karamoja. The rest, my Prime Minister will talk about it. The agriculture has given you what they will give you what they are doing, and water is a priority in Karamoja. We are doing all possible together with the Ministry of Water and Development partners to ensure that there are massive dams in Karamoja to support food production in the region. And within no time, you are going to see Karamoja turn around economically. But before I leave the microphone, I was moved by the testimony of the young corporate lady. And before she took on the platform, I was thinking about it. We all think that malnutrition is only among the poor of the poorest, but it's also in the homes of the rich, because of the likes of the corporate mothers that our lady Nanzi, is she Nanzi, gave a testimony about. The corporate ladies are focusing a lot of attention on our jobs, on our good looking, in nightclubs, and forgetting our children. Imagine leaving home at 5 a.m. and returning at midnight. What kind of job is that you are doing? Now, I'm point blank. We are putting a lot of attention on our lipstick, on how our faces are looking like, and leaving a lot of work to the house. These days we call them house managers. All the plates that you use in the night are piled up. All the clothes are piled up. The house is dirty. The compound is dirty. There is this one house manager you are leaving behind, and you're getting up in the morning without doing anything and going into the mirror and make up your face and rush to work. What will this house manager focus on? She will first focus on to finish the heap of clothes that you have left for her, to finish the work, because if you don't find the clothes cleaned, you know how rough these corporate mothers are. She has to clean the house and you find it clean. She has to clean the compound. She has to cook food for you and your husband, and forgets about the child. And definitely this child will be malnourished. So, corporate mothers, let us pick pieces from that lady and reform and get back home and take our roles as mothers and take care of our children. But there are also corporate fathers. I am a journalist who has moved around and seen a lot. If you want to know that they are leaving their children malnourished and feeding themselves well, you go in places where they prepare katogo in the morning. All the men are there. What have they left for their children at home? Nothing. Point blank. And my commissioner was talking about the Karamoja, and you were asking what men are doing while women are doing a lot of work. There is a lot of maternal workload in Karamoja, and that is a fact. A lady is the one who goes to the garden, is the one who goes to look for firewood. She's the one who constructs, who roofs the house, and looks for that grass to roof the house. So there is a lot of mindset change that we need to do. And lastly, let me talk about breastfeeding. A panelist from the Ministry of Health was talking about exclusive feeding of 6 months. Are the mothers doing that? The work is demanding. After 3 months, you have to return back to work. So there is no exclusive breastfeeding. Therefore, Honorable Call and we, the MPs, I think we have to have a policy that every institution has a mother care center where we can come with our children, we work as we breastfeed them. I think that should be a policy on our part as government to ensure that we take care of our mothers to save our children. But also, there is this, I will talk about it, there is this corporate say of mothers, young mothers, not wanting to breastfeed their children because their breasts will fall. It is there and it is happening. They introduce the children on milk immediately they give birth, and they deny the child of breast milk because they want to keep their breasts up, and yet the men are breastfeeding on these breasts of theirs. They concentrate on breastfeeding men and leaving around their children. So it is very bad. As I wind up, let us get saved to save this country and to save our young generation to have a better generation ahead of us. Thank you so much. I remain Agnes Nandutu, Minister of State, Karamoja Affairs in the Office of the Prime Minister.
I thought that you were going to say I remain Agnes Nandutu, point blank. Can we now have the Honorable Jennifer Namuyango contribute?
Right Honorable Prime Minister, colleague ministers, MPs, development partners, and all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's very difficult to speak after Agnes, but I just have 3 remarks. The first one is on Karamoja. I was privileged to serve as Minister of State for Water between 2006 and 2011. And we did some dams in Karamoja, which still exist. So we may not go for the expensive option of carrying water all the way from Lake Kwania, as proposed by Honorable Dietary. But if we invested more in those dams, because they have areas that are strategic in nature, and when it rains, there is a lot of runoff, which can be harvested by those water facilities. And then we just add a component of irrigation. After all, Karamoja soils are not infertile. These are good soils. You cannot compare with countries like Israel, Egypt, which have food, and their soils are poor. So for me, I believe if we did that, and then we put in irrigation, the people of Karamoja will not be fed by the country, but they will feed themselves. Number 2, Right Honorable, I had an opportunity to visit Brasilia, courtesy of World Food Program. And what we observed is that in every school they employ a nutritionist who advises on the diet. And as these young people grow up, it is inside them that they must feed balancing their diet. Now, when you look at our situation, where we are going to wait for mothers coming for antenatal, how about those who do not go there? And it's very difficult to change an adult. Very, very difficult. So I want to propose that we need to begin talking about nutrition, sensitizing our people, starting with the younger people. Because some people believe eating meat, that is good nutrition. If you move around, talk about Bunyoro, talk about Bukedi, and the entire country, because I also served as Minister of State for local government, you no longer find the gardens for vegetables in the homes. The women wait for meat, they wait for fish. And it is now not hard to find a family that has slept without eating because they didn't get sauce. So for me, I believe that Minister of Health, the nutritionist, Let's have time to speak to the population about balanced diet. You have the knowledge, but you keep it yourselves. Can we talk about this, sensitize the population, other than waiting for them in health facilities? The last one is in response to my sister Nanziri. For us again, Prime Minister, while in the Ministry of Local Government, we decided that this time whatever facilities like markets that we do, it is a must that a daycare center to take care of these babies, because majority of the women are the market vendors. So if you are going to tell a woman, because she has delivered, to resign her job, and yet majority are now women, they are the ones taking care of their families, then we shall render them unproductive. So for us, all the facilities that we put up, talk about Nyendo Market, Masaka, Mbarara, Soroti, Moroto, Arua, all these markets, Kitugum, Entebbe here, we put the mother care centers where women can come with their babies and take care of them. They can breastfeed them, they can look at them anytime, they can clean them, they can bathe them. I wanted to propose again that we make it a policy that even all MDAs, they must provide for this. For example, I had my last baby in Parliament, and this baby resisted the breast at 6 months, because by then I had also been appointed a Minister of State for Industries, and that's the time we had RRA. So we would go to Gulu, where the president would come, and we leave these babies behind. So the next time I came back, the boy refused to breastfeed at 6 months. And at that time, we didn't even have the daycare center at Parliament. We didn't have the daycare center at Parliament. I'm happy that now it is there. So if we have it at Parliament, we have these daycare centers in the markets, why don't we make it a policy that everywhere we have these daycare centers to facilitate the mother's work? Right, Honorable? There is a lot of processed food being eaten, the quick foods, but we are told they are less nutritious. So we need to go back to our roots and ensure that we eat well, but also based on the advice by these technical people who are very, very well informed, with very good titles, but they keep the information to themselves. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Jennifer Namyango. Let's have the Honorable Alice Kavoyo. Honorable Bwino, I'm keeping you for last because most of these issues revolve around agriculture. And so before I bring the experts to wind up, I will bring the microphone to you, but before your colleagues.
Thank you very much, Charles. Our Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, our panelists and experts here in nutrition, the press, ladies and gentlemen, I felt that I should also add my voice to all these people that have said something. Uganda, nutrition is cuts across every sector. It is very important for our livelihood. Uganda is a fertile country, and there is no reason why we should have malnourished people and stunted growth and so on. All our staple food, our cultural staple food are all very good. Millet, bananas, as in fruits and also food, cassava, fish, malewa, groundnuts, beans of different types, nswa, grasshoppers, mushrooms, grasshoppers and mushrooms used to be seasonal, but now we can grow grasshoppers and we can grow mushrooms. There's no reason why our people should suffer malnutrition, really. It is ignorance. I thought just before our lady here, Rachel, talked, I thought now it was an ignorance of our population because of lack of education. But when she spoke, then I'm like, we have a bigger problem. We have seen people who get money, eat a lot of meat and become fat, and that is a sign of wealth. Then also our cultural practices, negative cultural practices. In my culture, we don't eat pigs, we don't eat fish. That is a very good source of protein, but we don't take that culturally. So negative ignorance and negative cultural practices are also impediments to good nutrition. And also, of course, the way we prepare these foods of ours that are very rich, the way we process them, we over-process, and therefore it lacks, we burn out the nutrients that are in there. Food security, the Minister of Agriculture talked about animal food security. Very, very important. I want to thank you very much for bringing up this, this subject that is very important and central. I want to thank the development partners, all of you here. Honorable Namuyangu said that you keep the information. Please, sensitization is very, very important. And, you know, Honorable Cole, we need to go out there and sensitize our people and change their minds. And changing minds is not, it is not like a shot that you take or an immunization shot. It is not. We need all of us here. It is not for us politicians. All of us here need to go out there and sensitize our people, our ignorant people, our cultural practices that are not good. We need to all be out there talking to our population about these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Alice Kaboyo. I don't see the hand of any other minister. Let me now, my own minister in charge of ICT, Honorable Sebugwao, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Charles. Honorable Prime Minister and all the cabinet ministers present here, the panelists, good afternoon to you all. Mine is very, very simple. I'm from ICT, Ministry and National Guidance. So my work is to sensitize the public. And I want to promise the audience and all the Ugandans listening to me that we are going to do everything possible to make sure that we sensitize the population so that they know exactly what to do. We have radios and TVs and our ministries, therefore it will be very easy for us to transmit the information to all people. There is a mindset change which we have to do, because I heard that there are some people who don't eat some of the very, very nutritious foods like fish. How can you stop eating fish, you people? They don't know that. So that is the mindset. And I understand even in Kalamoja, they don't eat meat. Do they eat meat? They just take milk. Some of them don't. So that is the mindset we have to do. We have a lot of work to do. And we promise you that we are going to do it because we have all the media which can help us to transmit all the information you need. Uganda is a blessed country with good weather. I don't see why people should die of nutrition. I don't see why they should, because we have fresh foods. People just eat to fill their stomach. They leave out the food which is good, and they just eat because they are hungry, or they want to eat food which is full of fats and fats and carbohydrates. So I think what we have to do now as a ministry is to start these sensitization programs, and as ICT, we shall try to help the people to test the soil, because it's also another problem. Planting, we need to test the soil so that we plant plants which can grow on that kind of soil. We have to do some innovations and to promote and enhance agricultural production in the country. So we have to do that. As a ministry, our work is to transmit information to all the Ugandans so that they know exactly what they can do, and to take the right food for their health, and especially the children. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I wish now to invite the Honorable Bueno from Ministry of Agriculture. But something from that came close to the discussion that was being had on changing mindset and the cultural effect on nutrition. Someone called Achiro Inid from the Lutheran World Federation, the Department of Health and Nutrition Coordination, has said that areas of concern after this, can we have a study on the cost of culture on nutrition situation in Uganda? My thinking is that this will help us get a precise approach that is localized to solutions on how to address malnutrition. Finally, under Development Initiative for Northern Uganda, DINO, LEWA project implemented by LWF, I think that stands for Lutheran World Federation, there has been an attempt to have water harvest dams in Acholi and West Nile. These have successfully supported vegetable production throughout the prolonged dry spell. Can Ministry of Water have a plan for water harvesting in Acholi, West Nile, Lango, just like in Karamoja, to increase food production throughout the year? Thanks very much, Enid, for this contribution. It's very timely as the Minister for Agriculture comes in to weigh in and respond to some of the issues. Honorable, you're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Moderator. Right Honorable Prime Minister, I thank you for initiating and coordinating the National Information Platform for Nutrition. And I want to start from the question posed by my senior colleague, the Right Honorable Murundi Mukasa. The Honorable Murundi Mukasa. Honorable Murundi Mukasa said that the potential is all around us. The soils, the weather, the people. What remains is how. I think that was your question, Honorable Brody Mukasa. And I want to state that as a ministry, we have several interventions to address that question of how. I'll mention a few of them, but I'll mention them alongside what my senior colleague, Honorable Frank Tumweba said, that nutrition is an outcome. Nutrition is a dependent variable. There must be other independent variables. There must be intervening variables. And those intervening variables are our interventions. They include seed for production, seed for crops, seed for animals, seed for fish. When I talk about seed for animals, you may say this minister is making a mistake, but yes, it is a seed. It can be a good breed, it can be a good breed crossed with another good breed. Similarly for the fish. And as the ministry, we are saying that in order for us to avail the best food, rather the best seed to the farmers, we must control the production of the what we call the early generation seed. The early generation seed is the seed that is multiplied but by other seed multipliers before it is given to the farmers. So the production of the early generation seed is our responsibility, and we do it through the National Agricultural Research Organization. If it is for crops, we do it through NAGRIC. If it is animal, livestock, like cattle, like goats, like pigs, like chicken, and we do it through our research branch in Kajansi, if it is fish. Then the other issue is for us to ensure that what is grown or what is reared is disease-free. Or if it gets diseased, then we are able to treat that disease. So as a ministry, that is our mandate. The other very, very important intervention by my ministry is farmer education, to tell them what to grow, when to grow, how to grow it, and how to harvest safely. So that is farmer education, either through extension services or through farmer barazas or through TV, radio, social media, telephone messaging, telephone calls, and so on and so forth. Then the other is mechanization and irrigation. And mark you, all that I'm mentioning are the intervening factors that my senior colleague talked about. So mechanization, because the hand hoe is not enough for us to grow enough food for our population. Using the hand hoe, we have only been able to open up 35% of the arable land in the country. So if we are to expand beyond that, then we must use mechanization. We must use machines. We must use tractors and other forms of equipment. And to address the issues of climate change, we must bring in what Dr. Dietary said. He said, water, 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 and water. So whether it is Karamoja or elsewhere in the country, there must be water for production. And as a ministry, we are tirelessly working for provision of water to our people. And then we have the issue of having mobilized the population that is still under subsistence. These are the 39% of the Ugandans that are under subsistence. We are mobilizing them through the PDM, and we are telling them to grow the most profitable enterprises, coffee, but also dairy, poultry, piggery, fish. But on top of that, we are telling them to grow food. But still, to enhance the food production, we have taken the decision as a ministry to go beyond mobilizing the 39% and also mobilize others that are outside that bracket to grow food. And finally, because of the importance of fish, we have taken a decision that since fish is important for nutrition and also for trade and also for export and foreign exchange earnings, we must have a special intervention in the fisheries department. And we are planning that, and we are going to do it. Now, as we implement all those intervening factors, in as far as nutrition is concerned, what matters is for us as the Ministry of Agriculture to be nutrition sensitive as we implement these. So the question is, as you mobilize farmers, are you nutrition sensitive? And the answer is yes, we are. How can we demonstrate that nutrition sensitiveness? One, we have created a division within the Ministry of Agriculture, and this division is responsible for nutrition. And I think we have an officer here, an assistant commissioner responsible for nutrition in my ministry. That is a sign that we are nutrition sensitive as we do our mandate. But beyond that, I want to inform this audience that currently we are implementing the biggest nutrition project in Uganda, the first of its kind, and probably the first in Africa. And this nutrition project is called the Uganda Sectoral Food and Nutrition Project. I want to ask the coordinator of this project to stand up. So that is the coordinator of that project. What does this project do? Briefly, this project helps to encourage and facilitate the production of micronutrient-rich crops. Micronutrient-rich crops. What are these? These are vegetables, for example. These are the orange fresh potato, for example. The potatoes that look like carrots. They look like carrots because they are loaded with vitamin A. So we are promoting the production of such crops in 20 districts in this country. 20 districts in the east, 20 districts in the Midwest, the Southwest, and West Nile. And how did we select these 20 districts? We selected them based on a survey that revealed to us the most vulnerable districts in as far as nutrition is concerned. You know, we carry out such surveys twice a year. So having done that survey, we identified those districts where malnutrition was the highest. And therefore, we presented a proposal to Cabinet, and Cabinet approved, and now we're implementing that project. What has happened is that our entry point are the schools, and we are implementing this in 1,500 UPE schools in those 21 districts. But beyond the schools, we also go to the surrounding communities and we implement these interventions. What has come out of this is tremendous. When we went back to check through our survey, we found that many of the parameters had improved. And I think through collaboration with the UBOS, we shall be able to further this intervention. Today is not my day, much as we are important stakeholders in this. And indeed, in agreement with the proposal by that friend, I should have had a chair there so that I have enough time to articulate what we are doing and how we are doing it.
Thank you.
But before I conclude, I want to join my colleague, Honorable Namiyangu, to further strengthen the testimony of the lady, Angela. What Angela told us should be an eye-opener to all of us, that we should take more keen interest. And I'll give you my own example. I'm a grandparent. I'm a grandfather. Yes, I am, Mama. And one of my grandchildren was born in October 2021. And when my daughter, who is a medical worker, and her husband, who is a medical doctor, visited me, I looked at the child, the baby, the grandson, and I saw he was fine. Then they went back. After some time, they came again to visit me. As soon as they arrived, I asked them, are you aware that this baby has a problem? But they didn't know. The father is a medical doctor. The mother is a medical worker. But none of them noticed what I noticed. I immediately told them to sit in the car and we moved to Mulago Hospital. Yes, because what I saw to me was strange. But it called for the keen eye of the grandfather. When we reached Mulago Hospital, they did a lot of tests. Of course, what I saw was the head. The head had changed. It had become bigger. And I said, this is a deficiency of something. And after some investigation, they found that the baby had a deficiency of vitamin B. And how did he develop that deficiency? He was a premature. And he ought to have been introduced to vitamin B at that point. And he ought to have been put in the sunshine every morning. But they never did it. So the deficiency grew and the head continued growing. But thanks to my keen observation, that problem was arrested early enough, and the solution was simple. They said, every morning, put the baby in the sunshine. every morning, put the baby in the sunshine. And that was all. As we talk, the baby is normal. The head went back to the normal shape. Otherwise, it was becoming bigger and the eyes were, were popping out. But now they are normal. So what she said speaks to us becoming more and more keen, most especially those of you who say you are corporate. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I wish us to now start the conclusion of this. It's very interesting sitting here and hearing especially from the live experiences. I know all of us here have their own experiences and testimonies that would be very helpful, but nonetheless we have to end this. I want to now request, I'm giving only 1 minute to each of the panelists and only touch on your last message, but only touch on an area which has not been answered. If it was answered by your minister, please don't, because there were many questions. I don't want to go back to all of them, so that then we can invite the Minister for Public Service to invite the Prime Minister to make her remarks, and we close. Starting with, we can start with the lady on this side. Final remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been very enriching. Right, Honorable, it's good to have you in our presence. So listening to all the discussions following the presentations, it's been very enriching to learn, and I want to emphasize on one thing that came out very clearly: behavior change communication. And someone talked about engaging men. From the research perspective, we've carried that. We did a study in Chiboga, and what we did, it was on nutrition, but we emphasized on using a household approach, whereby we engaged both men and women. And in some of those nutrition discussions, men were the ones asking the hardest questions. They were very motivated to be part of the intervention. They were very motivated to learn more. And from there, they would always make right decisions to support their women. And it's because in most of our communities, men have an upper hand of deciding what land should be grown what. And the food that we grow end up contributing so much to what we end up having on the table. So we've learned from research that including men in the agenda of nutrition makes a big difference. So that is something that we should take away, and we could try to do that in whatever venture we do as different stakeholders. So lastly, coming from the CGR Center, where I'm also the country convener with members like IITA, SIP, SIAT, Biodiversity, IFPRI, and ILRI, we are committed to working together with the partners and make sure that the nutrition agenda is propelled in the proper way and we end up enhancing the nutrition of our population. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Beatrice. Let's have Sarah.
Thank you very much. All protocol observed. I just want to talk about hidden hunger, which is coming out, like the judge here mentioned, and also someone. In Ministry of Health, we also have programs where we have the supplementation. Supplementation is a temporary thing, but people tend to ignore it. Where we have micronutrient supplementation, like iron and folic acid supplementation for the women of reproductive age and the pregnant women. So many times when people ignore it, they get effects like the spinal bifida that she has talked about. We also have a program of food fortification, whereby when we identify a deficiency, we support the private sector to add these micronutrients in the food that they produce. And also lastly is human resources for nutrition. Our commissioner was a commissioner at Ministry of Health, and he has actually told us that the budget for nutrition is very minimal. Even the nutrition division is put under a small unit in the community health. And yet you've really seen why nutrition is very important. Since the policymakers are here, we advocate, or we want nutrition to be elevated in Ministry of Health, to at least at departmental level, so that we have the resources. We also have the human resource to also go down out there and get the message right. We have regional referral hospitals all around the country, and where we have experts, and we also want to have nutritionists in the districts, right even up to the sub-county level, to go and have this mindset change, and also counsel. You know, much as you do nutrition, you really need to advise. It's not just about information, but people have individual problems where they need counseling. So that's our prayer.
Thank you very much. I think your prayers is in good ears, especially that the Right Honorable Prime Minister has been with you at Ministry of Health, so she knows the problem firsthand, and the placement of nutrition as raised by Commissioner Okello is very important. But I thought Ministry of Health was going to respond to the specific question of tea or not tea, what amount. Dr. Rukundo, good. Dr. Rukundo, go for it. Your final comments and respond to that question.
Thank you, Charles. Our champion, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, Uganda is at the crossroads. We are really facing a double burden, some people call it a triple burden of malnutrition. As we see the numbers going down for undernutrition, Right Honorable Prime Minister, there is another side emerging now of the diet-related non-communicable diseases, cancer, hypertension, diabetes, and etc. And the food environment is now a big issue, like we have heard. And Charles, the issue of diet, the misconception around nutrition is on failure to understand the basics. When I'm teaching my students, we start with understanding what is food, what is meal, and what is diet. If you distinguish those three key points, then you'll understand that food is anything we are eating now. A meal is what you put together and eat at a particular point in time, while diet is what you eat over a minimum period of 24 hours. It does not matter what you eat at the meal time, lunch or breakfast. What matters is what you eat at the end of the day, because we can then compare what you have eaten with the standard expected of you. So we have what we call recommended levels. There's an amount for calories that you're supposed to eat as an adult. There's an amount for proteins per day. So the measure of what is an adequate or balanced diet will depend on whether what you have eaten over a minimum of 1 day meets the requirements of what your body needs for that day. And when we talk about adequate, we mean that you've met what your body needs. But when we talk about balanced, we mean that you've eaten all the varieties and they are complementing each other. When it comes to tea, it's a balanced issue. That when you eat some foods and some components, there are some others which work together, and there are some others which inhibit others. For example, when you get sick, they give you vitamin B complex. Why do they give you vitamin B complex? Because we need vitamin B for energy metabolism, for you to gain more energy and work together. For you to have blood, we don't need only iron-rich foods, we also need vitamin C. So we should not only eat foods rich in iron, but also eat foods rich in vitamin C, because they require to work together. Tannins in tea, what we call tannins, it's a compound in tea, that dark compound. It's also found in beans, in beer, and others. It is known to inhibit or complex with some nutrients, among them vitamin C, iron, and others. So what do we say? We say you may have the food, like Honorable Tumeba said, food security does not guarantee nutrition. You may have the food, but because of the combinations you've eaten it with, some nutrients are prevented, or they reduce the bioavailability. So the nutrients will be there, but they will not be used by the body. So due to that complexing. So what do we say? The easiest way for tea, take it with lemon. You have seen those lemon, people putting lemon in tea. If you put lemon in tea, it clears, because the lemon ascorbic acid is able to break the tannins. So that is the story. We say that it's a combination. That's why you see people when they're eating fish, they add some lemon, because then you reduce on some of the fats. There's a lot of science. We're not going into that. But yes, the tea, it has its advantages, even the coffee, and some disadvantages, even the alcohol and many other compounds. And those affect the balancing and they affect the availability of nutrients. So going forward, Charles, there's no time, we need a food systems approach that really addresses the causes of malnutrition, the various levels. If members here are aware, malnutrition is caused by immediate, underlying, and basic causes. Immediate causes, poor diet, infections, and disease. Immediately you get malnutrition. But underlying causes, food insecurity, poor care, low education, and poor health and environmental sanitation. Those are the underlying and the core issues we must address. At the system level, policy it is, but the issue is really looking at the underlying causes. And that's why we're saying a food systems approach that brings together all core sectors, trade, water, agriculture, public service for human capital, etc. Our colleagues from ICT, we all need everybody to contribute to this story. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rukundo. May I now invite Zach from the Development Partners.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, protocol observed. First, let me address Patrick's question on the issue of overeating. I think we need to distinguish that. We talk in the context of children under 2 years, and we talk in the context of breastfeeding and the context of complementary feeding. So we encouraging that as much as possible, do responsive feeding. Feed as much as possible for the child, be it the breast milk or the complementary food, because the child's stomach is so small that you need to eat as many as possible. Now that is different from now you are going into the double duty action, which is about now looking at the rising cases of overweight and obesity among adult and school-age children. So we need to avoid that, processing of food, etc., and all those things, we need to avoid that. So that is the distinction between what I was talking about, feed as many as possible, but then also ensure that you don't deprive the child from getting the right diet. The chairman of Mama Foundation, you raised the question of what is the issue? Why do we still have stunting when all these things are available? I'm just going to use one statistics being put up by UBOS. They're telling us that only 1 out of 10 children are eating the right food. That's the diversified food. Again, only 1 out of 10 children in Uganda are eating the food that is acceptable. That include the frequency that the child needs to eat it by the diversified nature of it. So if you look at these two factors, already we know that they're not eating well, and for that matter, we wouldn't expect much. We need to change these statistics. We need to make sure that more children eat the diversified food and they eat the quality of what is needed. And that is what compromises what we call about malnutrition. Now, moving forward, and that's where I'm going to conclude, we encouraging the system approach. And already Dr. has mentioned the food system. There are 5 systems we can all work towards achieving. One is the food system. The other one is the health system, to make sure that we strengthen the health system to be able to take care of those that are not malnourished, prevent them from becoming malnourished, but also those that are malnourished, they treat them. We're looking at the water and sanitation system, which has already been discussed as much as possible. We're looking at the education system. We need to change the mindset. We need to start from the schools, ensure that they get the right messages, go back home and then change the messages that are positive for nutrition at home and then with their parents. And lastly, we need to look at the social protection system. How are our policies protecting, for example, breastfeeding mothers to feed well? How are we making sure that the poor get the needed access to services to prevent malnutrition? We can wait for everything, but the child cannot wait to grow. The brain of the child cannot wait. If it waits, it gets to what we call stunting. school performance will be affected and others. So I'm calling all of us, let us not leave it to the nutritionists alone. Nutrition is not the business of only nutritionists. It is my business, it is our business, it is your business. It should be everybody's business. Let's start it from home and let us also make sure that children survive and live up to their full potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachariah. From the development community partners, may I now invite Tony from Karamoja.
Thank you, Charles. And so many issues were excuse me, raised about Karamoja. But first, Right Honorable Prime Minister, I'm exceedingly humbled to be speaking in front of you today. You're welcome. My Minister of State for Karamoja Affairs ably responded to most of the issues which are raised. But Charles, you may allow me just to respond to Dr. Dietary, and then I think Godfrey. I don't want to bite it.
Dr. Bitecherezo.
Okay.
Bitex.
Dr. Bitex.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Magala Godfrey. Just those two. He mentioned about the issue of doctor here, about us moving away from issue of food donation and aid. We should desist from that. And I made mention here about the opportunities that exist in Karamoja, but also the challenges that we are facing in spite of the different interventions and programs that we are undertaking. Now, for some of us here who have read the IPC report, IPC is the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, which was done by Food and Agricultural Organization and WFP. There, they profile the triggers of food insecurity in Karamoja specifically. And the issue of water was among the key triggers of food insecurity, but also insecurity itself. You know, because if you look within Karamoja and then across the border with Karamoja and Turkana and Pokot, but also in South Sudan, is issue of water comes in very handy. So the minister responded very ably to that. But as also the Prime Minister, and I'm thankful the Right Honorable Prime Minister is here, we have devised a number of short-term, medium-term, and long-term interventions to address issues in Karamoja. Now, the current food distribution, food aid, it was about, in the short term, can we save lives? It's about saving lives. Because if people are dying, if the issues are being reported, in the short term, so definitely food aid was necessary. But in the medium term, we want to embrace other intervention areas, the seed distribution that the Minister of Agriculture was talking about. Then in the long term, issues of agricultural mechanization, piloting irrigation, but also strengthening shock responsive systems, investing in the early warning systems, drought and other disasters. So those are some of the different initiatives and innovations that the Ministry and the OPM is going to undertake in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And we hope together, strengthening coordination under Ministry of Karamoja Affairs with other ministries, departments and agencies, development partners, we shall achieve more. And of course, I mentioned here that there's total goodwill from government and creating that enabling environment, especially the area of security in Karamoja. Finally, to my brother Magala Godfrey, I hope I got that name right. You mentioned something here boldly that Minister of Karamoja Affairs should desist from giving goats, cows, and posho. They're always sold and they're useless. I want to put it to you. One, I want to invite you to OPM and especially to Minister of Karamoja Affairs to understand more in depth what we are doing, how we are doing them, and the impact we have created. But again, coming back to you, I don't know the source of your information, but for your information, the goats that we've distributed, first of all, Dr. Rukundu here would agree with me that goat's milk is more nutritious than even the cow milk. I may be wrong, but that is, I think there's evidence to that effect. So it's making a difference. And of course, and also other livestock. If you talk of cows in the Karamojan culture, they're highly attached to it and they seldom sell those animals. But if the goats are being sold and the food that you're distributing are being sold, and you have evidence to that effect, and not relying on social media that Dr. Vitex was talking about, and rumors, I would challenge you that you give us that information. But also, very finally, there was the issue Charles also raised that, again by the same gentleman, about death attributable to hunger in Karamoja. That question is not for Minister of Karamoja Affairs to, because we do not know whether it's as a result of hunger or there are other underlying factors. That is an issue of Ministry of Health that validates and provides postmortem report whether somebody has died as a result of hunger or other underlying causes. And so it's not for us to answer that. And very finally, I want to challenge us that Karamoja is a beautiful place. Those who have not yet been to Karamoja, please, you're most welcome. Visit Karamoja. There are tourist sites, Mount Moroto, come to Kidepo, and you appreciate the context. Such that when we talk in our boardrooms, in our offices, you will know and appreciate the issues on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those very elaborate responses, very timely and relevant to the questions. Thank you so much, Tony. May I now invite Honorable Anthony Akol to give us his parting shots on the discussion. Honorable, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Charles. Right Honorable Prime Minister, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. Charles, before I can conclude, I want to emphasize that what we are discussing is 2019-2020. The situation in the country is worse than what was at that time. So I think it is important that if there are data and information relating to the current situation so that we arrest the situations, it will be good to be presented at appropriate time so that appropriate actions can be taken. I think that is key. My concern is that there is no way you can talk about issue of food security or nutrition if you don't address poverty, if you don't address the issue of climate change. Because I have a situation where a family, when they have changed diet, they have changed from the white beans to the black beans. I mean, you can't talk about nutrition when I can't afford. What is available is what I can eat. And that is what causes all this problem we are talking about. So if we want to deal with this issue of nutrition, we should first deal with the issue of climate change. I'm happy the minister is talking about water for production. Because in my own district, in Amuro, where we used to have a lot of food, in the first season, we lost all the crops. How will you then go to preach to somebody of that level who is looking for survival? For you, you are talking about balancing the food, dieting. What are you talking about? It doesn't make sense in that situation. So, if we want to succeed, let us address the issue of climate change. Let us address the issue of poverty in the country. Therefore, we can start talking this issue of nutrition or what it can come in. Otherwise, you are preaching to a poor person waiting to just eat to survive. That cannot work. Finally, there is a very important issue raised by Mr. Okello, that there is underfunding nutrition. It is a small section in the Ministry of Health, Charles and colleagues.
UBC, inspiring Uganda. Up next on UBC, brought to you by
Keep the lights on. Use Airtel Money to pay for all your Yaka bills conveniently. Open the My Airtel app to buy Yaka units. Airtel Money, simple, secure, borderless.
Hujambo mtazamaji wa UBC TV na kukaribisha katika taarifa hii ya habari ambapo tunakutangazia moja kwa moja kutoka studio zetu zilizopo mjini Kampala. Naitwa Bella Masangano na moja kwa moja katika habari yetu ya kwanza. Rais Yoweri Museveni ameongoza ufunguzi wa mkutano wa kimataifa wa 7 kuhusu mafuta na gesi mjini Kampala. Waziri wa nishati na madini Mheshimiwa Ruth Nankabirwa ni miongoni mwa waliohudhuria, ambapo pia rais alizungumzia kuhusiana na mradi huo wa mafuta na gesi. Na katika hotuba yake, Rais Museveni ameyahimiza makampuni ya mafuta na gesi nchini kuendelea na kazi zao na kuwa na msimamo ili kutimiza malengo ya uzalishaji wa mafuta na gesi ifikapo mwaka 2025. Ikumbukwe kwamba tarehe mosi Februari mwaka huu waendelezaji wa mradi huo waliruhusu utekelezaji wake kuendelea baada ya utiaji saini wa mkataba wa utekelezaji wa mradi wa ujenzi wa bomba la mafuta ghafi.
You know, I spent many years studying English. 12 years. I think one of the words I picked up in those years is insufferable. Some of these people are insufferable. You need to control yourself not to explode. So shallow, so